Okay, all right, we've begun. So if everyone could put their name in the chat and their affiliation, that would be great. And I am going to, I guess before kicking things off, just quickly go through the agenda. So we're going to continue our discussion from the last meeting about some of the covered materials and definitions. And then after that, we have a letter that we shared from PCIA. I hope I got that acronym correct. And so we will also be giving them the opportunity to speak about that and take some comments, and then we'll end with a public comment section. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So at the end of our last meeting, I believe we left off with the definition of a multi-material. And so I'm going to scroll down there and we'll start off from there. Apologies for the delay. Here we go. Okay, here we are. So does anybody have any thoughts about this definition that they would like to discuss? All right, yeah, go ahead, Peter.
What's the purpose of it? What's it needed for?
Yeah, that's a great, that is a great question. I think that we just wanted to make sure that people understand where things that are multi-materials fit into the system, and I think that it's relevant to the material categories, right? Like when we're thinking about where things fit into different categories, we might also need to think about how things that are multi-material fit into those categories. But I'd also like to open it up to the rest of the council and see if anybody has anything else they'd like to share related to that.
Sarah, if I may just make a comment. I think the best approach here would be to ask if anybody has anything that stands out, since you guys forwarded this to everybody. Because one of the things we need to make sure we keep our focus on is this really the implementation timeline. I think that concerns for everybody, so that we make sure we are working down to all the different milestones we have as part of the implementation. Instead of going line by line, that might be the best approach, at least today.
Okay, yeah, we can, I do want to make sure that if anybody has thoughts about any of these categories, we address them all. So I'll maybe try to go through rather quickly if we don't have something to discuss related to one of them, or if there are specific things that people would like to focus on, we could do that as well. Maybe yeah, maybe, you know what I'll do is I'll just open the floor right now for a couple of minutes. Are there any topics related to these definitions or to the covered materials list? Yeah.
Could we just go ahead and finish up on multi-material?
Sure.
Hey, Sarah, Chaz, can I just jump in very quickly just to share this one item? Peter, you asked as to why it's being defined. It is in the statute, and so to ensure clarification, the regulations are supportive of that statute, and we need to clarify exactly what is the intent and from the department's approach as to what is multi-material. So if you look back at the law, it refers to the term multi-material throughout, but it does not have a defined there's no definition, and this is in support of that definition.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's necessary. I don't know if it serves a purpose, because you're in your reporting categories, you're going to define then specifically as to how different types of potentially multi-materials will need to report.
And
Okay.
I'm just simply curious if any of the other states are defining multimaterial, if this is similar to that definition.
Yeah, that's a great question. Peter, are you aware of a definition that exists in other states?
No.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Martha.
I was just going to say that one of the objectives is to come up with stuff with packaging that's more recyclable, and lots of times the multi-material isn't. And so you come up with this, you have to be able to identify the things that need to be changed to improve the recyclability of packaging. So I think it's absolutely necessary, and I think I would be interested in knowing about alternatives here. I mean, I've heard people talk before about, well, what percentage has to be something else? You know, is the label make it multi-material and all that? So I don't know if that solves this problem. I'm not an expert on it, on multi-material packaging, but I'd like to know what the alternatives would have been, and you know, where we came up with this particular I think it needs to be defined, but where did we get this language?
Go ahead, Chaz.
Just wondering if just about anything is multi-material. A glass bottle has a paper label on it and a metal cap. I mean, you can go on and on and on. So I sort of think Peter raised a good point, just how this is necessary.
Okay, thank you. And then Abigail.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is another instance of, I forget exactly where this is in the legislation for what it applies to exactly, but when we get into the arena of multi-material as its own special definition, is it going to have its own category where it has to have additional oversight by the PRO? Is it going to have its own special numbers and eco-modulation expectations related to it? And then, you know, we have completed research. We are in the midst of additional research that's related to, you know, for example, paper products that have non-fiber components, and how much or when that has an impact on recycling, and when it has zero effect. And so having it sort of lumped into a category that's just multi-material, and some of those are going to be a much bigger deal than others, is a lot more complicated than if it was perhaps, you know, paper product with something, you know, as a part of what's already existing in paper. And so I would agree with others that I worry that this definition or this category becomes more of a burden than a help. And maybe it's that a clear definition is useful, but there is a value here within this council to understand when it should be applied to different situations in the EPR program overall, and when it is not applicable is maybe where it becomes also important to understand this term. Thanks.
Thanks, Abigail. Go ahead, Scott.
Yes, thanks. I'm on travel, so I'm going to stay off camera most of the morning here, so I'm out west at PAC Expo. You know, Chaz drew me in. I think there's a difference between a paper label on a glass bottle and a multi-layer, multi-material thing that's hard to sort at a MRF, right? So to me, Sarah, I think Shannon said something like, there's something in the statute about multi-materials, so we have to, so the regs are going to have to define it at some point, but isn't the real issue that it's a complicated mix of things that can't be properly sorted at the primary MRF or, you know, something like that in the capture rate? And it kind of leans towards the California issue that we talked about 1 or 2 meetings ago that has twice as many categories for producers to report into. You know, is it glass with a plastic lid is a different category, a plastic cap is a different category than glass without a plastic cap. And we wanted to try to, again, the real issue is, for what purpose is the definition really going to serve? And if we can figure out what the purpose of the definition is, other than the fact that it's in the statute and we need to define it, then I think we can better figure out how to define it for the purposes of the law.
Great. Okay. Are there any other thoughts about multi-material? And Rick and then Eileen.
Good morning, everybody. Rick Beers from Independent Can Company. I'm just wondering, is there any way, I just got the first email that this was happening, so I'm probably joining the party very late. This document that you're showing on the screen, is there anywhere to access this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this was sent out to the advisory council, and I believe it was sent out to the advisory council email list. So if you're not on that email list, we can certainly add you. And I also want to note that there will also be a public comment period at the end of this meeting. So like, please feel free to share other things like that, and make sure you get information from us during that period of time as well. But yes, we can absolutely add you there. And then go ahead, Eileen.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Sarah. No, I just wanted to say from the perspective of, I think if it's referred to as a term in the statute, we really do have to define it. Otherwise, it's just going to cause hiccups and issues moving forward. But I think we maybe do need to work a little bit more on the definition. Chaz mentioned a lot of things can be considered multi-materials, although in my mind, when I read the multi-material definition, I went in a different direction, in the direction of those items that are comprised of or constituted of multiple types of materials. And those are ones that are typically for recycling facilities, tougher to recycle and more problematic for recycling. So I think that multi-material needs to be included because, as Martha mentioned, I think, we need to include it, if nothing else, to see how we can motivate for it to be either reduced out of the waste stream or for improvements in packaging, improvements in process, in order to be able to recycle it more readily, this type of material.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Eileen. I think we're going to move on to packaging from here. Does anybody have any comments related to packaging? All right. I am going to move on from packaging to person. And I just want to let everyone know that I'm at the moment skipping over the definitions that don't have any pink in them, because those are definitions that we didn't change, like that haven't been modified at all. Nothing's been added to them from what was originally in the law. So we're skipping over paper products, and now we're on person. Does anyone have any thoughts about this definition? All right, moving on to primary packaging. And I think that we could discuss this in the context of primary, secondary, and tertiary packaging. Although let's maybe start with primary packaging to give everyone a chance to look at those other two definitions. Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I'm not sure, like, where did these definitions come from? I guess I'm trying to figure out, I've never seen this type of definition before, so I would get confused as to, like, you could have like a bag in a box, like for wine or whatever. Is the bag the primary packaging because it's the only thing in contact, but it's essentially stuck together, right? So I'm not sure I find the definitions, all three of the definitions, that helpful, and I think they may cause some confusion.
Go ahead, Chaz. Oh, Chaz, you're on mute.
I think Peter made an excellent point, and we talk a lot about harmonization. Has any attempt been made to harmonize with definitions in other states, or are these just all a product of the lawyers over at MDE and the staff?
Yeah, we're certainly taking the harmonization into consideration, and so if anyone has suggestions from other states' language that they really like and think works very well, we'd love to hear about it.
Well, Peter, did you say you just don't see this language in other states?
Peter, you're on mute also.
Sorry. I don't think we have language yet in other states. I mean, it's certainly defined in Canadian legislation, so you could look to the Canadian legislation as an example. I think Ontario has specific language around primary, secondary, tertiary. But again, part of me just says, like, we should have some kind of basis as to sort of what are producers used to, and there's certainly lots of other guidance that's out there provided by other producer responsibility organizations that might be helpful to align with.
Okay, great. Thank you, Peter. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I was going to say this. I've seen it in Canadian regulations, and I think New York may try to distinguish primary from secondary, and Peter wouldn't have seen that yet because it's not a law yet, so it's not on his radar screen. But there has been some attempt, I think, in New York to try to define primary versus secondary, and it's really to align it in the primary, secondary, tertiary. Right? If we're going to be talking about secondary and tertiary packaging, what is primary versus that, right? The can, in the case, in the pallet wrap, kind of thing. But it may not be that easy as Peter pointed out, the way that this particular definition goes. It could be the bladder of wine inside the box of wine. It could be, that may be a little bit more too strict of a definition, for some products.
So,
Okay.
so would it make sense to really look at even the European definition? Because I think most people will say primary is when it has contact with the product. Maybe if we look at what whether Canada and some of the European definitions, and then we just pick it from there. I think it will allow for harmonization. Even if it's not in the other states, it will help us. I think between those two, I think we can pick a language. And Peter, since you brought up Canada, and if you want to propose something from there, and we can combine it with some of the European definitions, because it should be more straightforward than just spending too much time on it.
Thanks, Michael. I mean, I'm not totally sure we need it for this round, for the reporting round. I'm not totally sure it's necessary to be defined So if this is an issue where it's like, we've got lots of other things we got to figure out, I'm not sure this piece is needed at this moment. Because I think packaging is already defined. So
yeah. No, I agree. That's what I'm saying. At least let's focus on the timeline and not spend too much time here. This can be picked up from what we know, and then we can add that language, have everybody see it. And public comment time will be another place to say if you agree or if you don't agree. But I think the bottom line is this is not going to be the sticking point, because it's been defined in Europe. I think I hate to bring everything from Europe because we want to make sure we adapt it for ourselves as well. But between that and Canada, we should be in good shape. So.
Okay, go ahead, Martha.
Yeah, I just want to say that when this bill first came out and it talked about primary, secondary, and tertiary, I had to look for a definition because I didn't know what it meant. And this was almost universally the definition. But there's an overlap here between multi-material and primary packaging. I think that's come up about the wine bladders and the boxes. I mean, if you look at the aseptic packaging, it's made of multiple materials. Is it the innermost part of the multi-material that's, in the secondary is the outer part, or is there such a thing as multi-material primary packaging? So just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Martha. Okay. If there are no more comments about primary packaging, I think we will move down, and we're really almost done with this definition section. Producer responsibility organization is something that we still need to go over. Does anybody have any thoughts about this definition? Okay, great. And then producer reporting categories. Yes, Peter.
Oh, sorry. I just wasn't sure I understood what the, because producer responsibility organization is defined in the legislation. So is there a need? What is the need to additionally add more information?
Peter, that's the type of thing I'm talking about. We don't need to address things that are already clear in the statute. I think, we should, unless anybody has an opposing view of what PRO is. PRO is very well known. If not, I think we don't need to spend too much time redefining such things.
Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide this, clarification. So when these laws are passed, they have some vagueness to them, and it is up to the department to provide supporting, whether it's definitions or regulations, to clarify it. And so, Peter, this is just a clarification on the definition of producer responsibility organization, in that a producer responsibility organization is approved by the department. So it's not just what a pro is in the generality of a producer responsibility is a nonprofit, but that we have the oversight of approval for a period of time for specific covered materials. And so again, these are just more clarifying features associated with the definitions, and it's to ensure that there is no concern down the line as to where those defined terms meet the requirements of the law.
So you're saying the law doesn't say the state approves the producer organization?
Not this law. No, it does not.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Shannon, and thank you all for your comments about that one. And then I think we will move on, if nobody has further comments there, to producer reporting categories. This is an entirely added definition. And this definition, please correct me, Shannon, if I'm wrong here, but I think this definition was just added because we, this is one of the things that we are focused on for regulations. So,
And I believe our plan may be to remove this definition because we are not sure if it supports the regulations as overall. So I think we can move on to the next one.
Okay, great. Moving on. Producer responsibility plan. This the only change here was to acknowledge that individual producers may be submitting responsibility plans as well. So if no one has anything against that addition or any comments, I'm going to move on down to secondary packaging, which we already partially discussed. I think if this group is okay with moving on from secondary and tertiary packaging, given the comments that we had about Canada and New York, we can certainly do that, but I'll provide a brief space in case anyone wants to jump in. All right. Okay, so small format. This is again something that was fully added. Yes, go ahead, Peter.
Sorry, I'll be quick. So just on small format and void fill, I don't think either one of them are necessary. So the pro will identify reporting categories based on how materials flow through a MRF. So, the definition of 2 inches or less gets defined based on what a MRF can actually process. Same goes for multi-materials. We set up our categories to address materials that are difficult to either process, collect, or have issues with end markets. So that gets addressed in the reporting categories. So I think this is serving a duplicative purpose. And again, void fill would be something that's already captured as a package already. And so I don't see any necessary reason to try to identify every sort of component of packaging.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Does anyone else have thoughts about small format or void fill? I'll open it up to both. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I'll back up Peter on this one. This is how this gets into the categories, because small format can be a bunch of different materials, but not necessarily everything that's under. So, small glass is not a problem because all the glass turns small in the process. But yeah, I think Peter covered it. I just want to give him a second.
Okay, great. Okay, I see some other thumbs up emojis coming through. Okay, so with that, we have finished the definition section and we'll be moving on to categories of covered materials for registration. I think the way that I'm going to approach this is in broad categories. So we'll start with paper, and I'll open it up to any conversation regarding the paper section of this list. Go ahead, Abigail. Sorry, go ahead, Abigail. I'm not sure if you may be on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm having to be on my computer and my phone because my computer's audio is apparently not working. So there are a lot of subcategories here that are probably not necessary to draw distinctions between. I think that it is, some of this I suppose makes sense, but is this with the intent of capturing as much paper as possible, or is it to is this how it's going to be broken? Is the expectation that this is how the PRO is going to have to break things out? Because having separate for aseptic cartons versus gable top, having paper for general use versus other print, it's a lot here, and I don't think it's necessarily organized in the most like clear or clean way. So is there context for where this list came from, maybe?
Yeah, so Peter in a previous meeting had shared some categories that I believe were from Colorado. Is that correct, Peter?
This is like a mix of multiple states
Yes.
without, but it's without normalizing it, so it's not redundant in some ways, is my concern.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we're definitely trying to harmonize as much as possible with other states while recognizing
So
differences that
can
make
I
sense in there.
offer
Yeah.
can I offer to potentially take this list and come back to you guys with maybe one that's a little bit less repetitive or redundant, that sort of captures it more cleanly? I just like uncoated corrugated cardboard versus craft paper, like those are, it might be 3 layers versus 1 layer, but it's going in the same machine with the exact same results. Like some of this is just kind of, I don't know why. And yeah, to Chaz's question, what is paper for general use versus um, yeah, these are distinctions that do not matter to a recovered fiber facility. And probably, I mean, Eileen should speak to how it's received by a MRF, but paper's not this complicated, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So I'll see if others have thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, I'll turn it over to Eileen.
Thanks. No, Abigail, I was just going to say, I think one of the things, when you go from legislation forward to regulation, the legislation is not intended to capture everything. And then when you move forward to regulation, you get into often more details that are helpful to people looking at the regulation to see exactly, what is called for, etc., what is, required, mandated. When I looked at this list, I had a little bit of a different take than you. I thought it was a pretty good list. For example, the example you gave of uncoated or coated corrugated cardboard versus craft paper, to us, it is distinctly different. But I think, one of the things just in general with regulations, I think it's important for there to be some clarity provided to the reader, to whoever is looking at this. So, and I will say, going back to our earlier discussion about void fill and small format, one of the things is, I just think we also should not rely on people having to go to a later step to understand what is included or impacted or not. I just wanted to add those tidbits to the conversation.
Thank you, Eileen. And Angie, did you had your hands up, took it down. You don't have to speak if you don't want to.
No, I mean, I agree with both sides. I agree that maybe the list could be content slightly or clarified a little bit more with the small format or paper for general use. When it comes to a MRF, a lot of those are lumped together. I will say that. But I agree with Eileen in the fact that for legislation purposes, they may have to be defined a little more or separated out. But I understand where Abigail's coming from, being a processor, that, cardboard goes into cardboard for the most part to a certain extent, and paper, goes into paper. But yeah, I mean, again, I think a little bit of more clarification on paper for general use, small paper format, might be helpful. That's all. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for those comments. I am going to move us along, unless there's anything else about paper, to our rigid plastic category. Does anyone have any thoughts about the rigid plastic category? And unfortunately, it's not all showing on this page. So I can maybe, what I'll do is I'll just pause here for a second and then I'll scroll down to the next section, but feel free to jump in the meantime. And if someone could maybe give me like a thumbs up when they've had a chance to look through this, that would be great. Thanks, Mike. All right, I'm gonna just give us one more opportunity. If anybody has comments about rigid plastic, please feel free to share. Otherwise, I'll move on down to flexible plastic. Yeah, go ahead, Martha.
So small format plastic, is that like, just like little bits and pieces of any of those resin codes? Is that, what does that mean? Small format plastic, if we're going to get rid of small format.
Right, so small format would be inclusive of different kinds of plastic, and it would meet that definition that we had placed up above, or there would be a definition for small format either. Yes, yeah. So there would certainly be guidance around that, but that would include all different kinds of codes as it's written here.
It's kind of mixing two different categories. One is size and one is what plastic is. That's why it's a little bit confusing here.
Okay. I am going to move down to flexible plastic, and thank you, Martha, for that comment. Anyone would like to speak about flexible plastic, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So
Yeah, go ahead, Martha.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not as familiar with these detailed definitions, but is there some other definition other than the resin code that used in the industry to describe what's flexible, and as opposed to what kind of plastic it is? A measure of flexibility?
I would certainly like to open that question back up to the group if anyone has
So
knowledge.
it actually is defining flexible plastic as flexible plastic made of these resins, as opposed to what flexible plastic is.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew. You may be on mute. I don't think we can currently hear you. Okay. Andrew, just so you know, we can't currently hear you. If you would like to jump in at any point, go for it. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Great. Okay, moving on. We already touched on small format plastic. I'm going to move past this one, but if anyone would like me to go back, please let me know. And move on to metal. Yeah, go ahead, Abigail. Abigail, just so you know, we can't hear you either.
Sorry, I unmuted the wrong device. I'm not sure that we have people that represent that know the metal category or the plastic category. I'm wondering if this is something where we needed outside guidance. If this is going to be hard and fast and necessary to be held to later, I would not presume to be able to answer anything on either of these categories. I just wanted to throw it out there that I'm not sure we have that expertise on this council. And so perhaps the comment period is going to be very important for this section.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to glass, which I know that we have representation here for. So opening it up to discuss glass.
Sorry, I'll raise my hand.
Yes, go ahead, Scott.
The color really, I know that some people really like to define and separate the colors, but from a recovery standpoint, it doesn't matter what color it is. There are marginal differences in end market value for the material, but I don't know that that should really qualify as a different category for reporting. And then, yeah, ceramic, stone, porcelain, Pyrex, other things are not glass. I guess that's consistent with the definition of the other materials that you've done. All the things that aren't defined as those things are not these things. So I'd want to add, well, you know, you're covered with glass-like material, you know, things like borosilicate glass, you know, things of that nature. But I don't know. The whole color thing, you know, is, I don't know if, Pete, it helps to have people reporting different colors in different color categories. It's either clear or, you know, has a color, but I don't know that it's necessary that you distinguish between the color of the glass as a different category.
Go ahead, Eileen. Unless, Scott, you had anything
So,
that you
No, I'm happy to discuss with Eileen.
yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. You know, for us, we do sort into different color, the clear versus the what we call gramber, which is a green and amber mix. But I just want to say generally, so it could be that it doesn't so much matter now, the distinction between the colors. But I think what we also need to consider, because once this regulation is in effect, it's in effect for forever until it's either revised or changed up. And so one thought that I have is, yeah, it may not matter so much now, but could it make a difference in the future, or could it be a factor in the future? Just add that tidbit for consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Eileen. Go ahead, Mike.
So I just want to comment on both Scott and Eileen's comments. One is, if I bring our experience from Europe, all the glass materials are bunched as one. Glass. In fact, right now, if you go to France, they separate glass from everything else, and they put all the glass in there. So that's one thing. But I think, Eileen, your point is important. Even in these regulations that we're putting together, they are not sacrosanct. Meaning, if you look at how other people have approached it in Europe, I think some of the things they are doing with their circular economy action plan, they're actually revising things and updating it as information and technology evolve. So I think there'll be room for that. I don't think that that should slow us down from, really accepting the fact that glass is glass for now. Scott, I think you pointed out, when you look at porcelain, it is never considered as glass, because that's not what you need. So I think in such a case, this is a straightforward one. But I think we should know that in the future, we have opportunity to enhance anything that is in regulation, because, that's how things evolve. So overall, I think this makes sense in the case of glass. And thanks for the comment, Scott.
Yeah, this doesn't necessarily define how the pro is going to assess fees or anything like that. It just is saying what is glass.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
I do just want to recircle back to this as we have it written right here. Now we're looking at non-pigmented and pigmented as those two major categories. And Eileen, were you saying that you think it would be helpful to have additional categories related to color, or is that not what you were getting at?
No, I when I read these definitions, I thought they were fine. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. All right, so moving on to certified compostable. And I would actually like to talk about these last two together. So I'm going to open this conversation up to both the certified compostable category and the wood and other organics. Yeah, go ahead, Abigail.
I think I'm trying to understand the use of wood and other organics as a category for this. Are we is there an example of when would be included as a packaging? Are we thinking pallets? Are we thinking wooden cases that a trunk? Because a lot of that I think would go under long-term packaging and maybe doesn't need a separate definition. I just, if it's like OSB or treated wood, it's usually not finished with the intent of it being compostable. It's and there's not a standard, whereas most paper-based packaging would get the ASTM 6868 standard. I think I don't know when this would come up, maybe is my issue, or yeah. It makes it hard for me to give guidance on the definition. I think these are, I mean, all wood is not plastic or bioplastic, I suppose, unless it's cellulosic. It's down to that level. I don't understand why this isn't here.
Yeah, sure. So I think like in those other categories where we have kind of those catch-all categories, right? Like other metal, we just wanted to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks, right? So if there is some organic packaging that doesn't meet a standard, it might fall into one of these categories. And I think like maybe, I'm not sure, Shannon, if you have anything else that's coming to mind for you, and not to put you on the spot, but like I think one of the things we were thinking about was wax packaging perhaps, and I don't know if anyone else among this advisory council has other thoughts about things that might fit into this category, but I just wanted to share some of those thoughts.
Yeah, and Abigail, I'll just, reaffirm what Sarah was referring to. One of the things we've heard in some of the national calls is the preparation to ensure that there are no free riders to the system because of an unintended, lack of definition or category for this type of material, right? So if it's so distinct or it doesn't fit in the existing categories, then that they essentially become a free rider for the system. When it comes to untreated or uncoated organic packaging, that we're referring not to a paper product, we're referring not, but it is an organic, right? And so we're trying to make sure that we're encompassing those packagings that are not considered long-term, because there are, sometimes there's nuances. Again, looking at that non-free rider, protective aspect to this, so that someone within one of the other defined categories is not paying for someone that is allowed to move their materials freely.
Okay, this makes more sense now. I don't know that wood has to specifically be called out then. It could just be organic packaging, not otherwise identified or something like that. I don't think anyone would suggest that wood is inorganic. And then just a small like grammatical issue or others happens twice in letter B. But I think you could say other organic packaging, and you could mention that wood is included, but I don't think wood has to be individually called out necessarily. So I think that would fit in with what is included.
Thank you, Abigail. Chaz, did you put your hand down?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think this is one of the attempts that we made to harmonize. And so, Peter, I'm not sure if you have any thoughts. I think this is harmonized with what was shared related to Colorado. Yes, Abigail, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I forgot to mention certified compostable. Plastic is not the only thing that's compostable. There is paper-based packaging that is compostable. And so I think that if we're trying to include things by intentionally mentioning them, then number 7 should include paper-based packaging that meets the compostable certification requirements. And I'm happy to give you language for that.
Great, thank you. When we're thinking about paper that is compostable and a lot of paper might fit that category, is there a way that you consider paper fitting into this category and fitting into other categories? Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring up something I believe, Abigail, you mentioned relative to the ASTM standard associated with paper compostability. And, one thing we want to make sure we measure appropriately is that the intention would be to transfer paper to paper as opposed to paper that goes to compost, because it's simply it has the capability of that. We want to make sure that we're returning these materials back to the highest level within the market as possible. And so we're trying to address where these nuances are to the best of our ability. And we would recommend, anyone to suggest anything that they think would be appropriate as far as categories that encompass both the compostable identified products, but also that they're going to the highest level category when it comes to being received at the recycling or reuse systems.
Yeah, and this is where paper is really difficult, because a majority of paper is both compostable and recyclable, where good accounting is incumbent on an effective program, because we also would rather, like, the most of it possible can go to recycled. Recycled content is the entire business proposition for certain of our members that make 100% recycled content, and others it's not. But we look to, BPI for their certification programs. We look to the ASTM standard for defining what is certified compostable. And then, sorry, Eileen, you might have suggestions on this, but it is, our goal for many of our members is that it go to recyclable. But if it's got food contact or something like that, and a MRF or someone does not want to deal with that in recycling stream, then they're going to push it towards a compostable stream as the next better alternative. And so the definitions should be productive and effective to account for that.
Yeah, no, Abigail, totally agree. I mean, I think we're always looking for highest and best use, for sure. But at the same time, I was thinking also, there are those paper type products that are not eligible for recycling anymore because they were used to contain, let's say, food. And so in those instances and for those items, want to try and maybe reflect them under compostable. So I don't know if there's a way to, not to be redundant, but maybe just to kind of put a reference line or at least reflect that somewhere under certified compostable, because it's sort of, those compostable items are not always of a plastic type, right? Thank you.
Eileen, go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, and again, this is just up for conversation, and we'd really like your input. Would it be useful or helpful if the category itself, specifically at the top of the list, again, because paper was the first category is being presented, if there was a category specifically assigned to food serviceware for those paper products, so that calls that out in the initial reporting category, not that all paper meets that standard. Abigail, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on this. And I think someone from FPI is also on the call.
Yes, and Kara, please feel free to speak up if I'm missing any key elements to this. But I think that you've got multiple sections where you've broken things down, and so if it makes sense for compostable paper, compostable paper to be fit under the upper paper category versus certified compostable, that's okay. It seems like biodegradable plastic is mentioned up towards the top and then again down here. But it's not only food contact, right? Like in Maryland, we use yard bags, paper bags to collect the yard waste. And so I don't think it should necessarily be limited to food contact. And depending on the facility that receives the material, some recovered fiber facilities can take a fair amount of food contact before it's any sort of, like, we don't want a whole pizza in a pizza box, but we can get a very grease soiled box and it still be reusable. It does not need to go to compost, but it's not just about us. It's also about everyone else that the machine that packaging touches before it gets to the recovered fiber facility. And so that's where I think that too much distinction between categories is going to limit, because we have facilities that can take specifically, explicitly are looking for food serviceware that has come into contact with food into their recycling systems. And then there are others where having the compostable definition is very valuable. So just speaking on behalf of too much rigidity here would block the potential for innovation and advancements.
Okay, thank you both. Yes, go ahead, Chaz.
I think Abigail made an excellent point. We don't know yet how EPR for packaging will work in this country. We only have one operating program, and it's only 2 months worth of operation. And I think there is a danger in trying to create perfect regulations when we still have no idea what that means. And we have no operating examples to learn from. A lot of theory about EPR, but no operating examples in this country yet. I think we need to keep that in mind. I say that as partially as a former regulator.
Thanks, Chaz. Okay. Does anyone else have thoughts about the compostable and organics sections? Or any thoughts specific to how paper might fit in there? Okay. That, I believe, concludes this part of our conversation. So thank you all for contributing and for this really thoughtful conversation. I'm going to transition us over to the letter that we received from PCIA. So if anyone from PCIA is on this call and would like to speak about what was included in that letter, I'm going to open the floor. Let me pull that up. And if no one is here from PCIA, if anyone from the Advisory Council had a chance to read through this letter and has thoughts about it, please feel free to share. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I read the document, but I think it's very straightforward what they're asking. They're asking for the pressurized cylinders to be excluded from this. I think if you look at the argument they make, they also made some very good references from the Circular Economy Action Plan that Europe has articulated and related to cylinders as well, pressurized cylinders in particular. As you know, I think there's a federal guidance on how to handle pressurized cylinders. But the most important thing is its emphasis on reuse platform as a major thing for this. So what I would say is that if you look at it, it makes sense for them to really propose this. And I think we need to consider the fact that not everybody can handle pressurized cylinders at the curbside or even in the mosques. I don't think they would, I don't know any mob that accepts that. Maybe somebody can correct me, at least from other jurisdictions that we've seen around the globe. That's a very tough thing to really have people handle. It has a good reuse platform already. If you go to Lowe's or go to any of these places to have your pressurized cylinder, it's really something that is very difficult to talk about either optimizing the cylinder or doing it. So I think as a separate category, this makes sense. But I'd like to hear what everybody feels, because we don't want to expose people to the challenges that this thing would bring if you include it as part of this. I think I really sympathize with their position and think that the emphasis on reuse, this is a good example of reuse, that we should work around that to exclude that.
Yeah, go ahead, Eileen.
I just wanted to say for Montgomery County, we do not collect them curbside because of the issues that PCIA, cites. However, we and of course we encourage the reuse and the refilling that happens. However, there does sometimes come a time where they're not refillable or reusable any longer. They may be, dented, somehow it's not eligible for reuse anymore and refilling. And so we do accept them dropped off at our transfer station for recycling. And we take a lot of care in making sure, we ask people that that they no longer be pressurized when they're bringing them into us. But then we also have a process by which we also address each and every one to make sure that they're no longer pressurized and no longer contain anything. So, and then we do recycle the scrap metal. Just wanted to provide that for edification.
Yeah, thank you, Eileen. Go ahead, Chaz.
Now, Peter might be able to answer this question, but and it's brought up in the letter. Don't they have specialized programs in Canada for pressurized containers? Because as the letter points out, I don't know of any haulers who want to have a pressurized propane container put into their collection truck. It's not a pretty picture. But I mean, maybe some guidance along the lines of what's in the letter would be very helpful.
So would it make sense to have the PRO, in this case CAA, talk about how, assuming it's no longer able to be pressurized, how that would work? And then that could be something that go into regulation. But really, you don't want to have people handling this anyhow. That's an accident waiting to happen, and it's very dangerous. So I would definitely recommend, at least from what I've seen overseas, this doesn't go into the recycling facilities. They are handled separately. And if there are times when they are unfit to be reused or refilled, of course, the scrap metal can be processed. But we really have to be careful not to put in things that will really cause bodily harm. Remember, safety of the individual is critical in this EPR agenda.
Thank you, Mike. All right, if we have no other comments regarding this letter, I will move us along and thank you all again for this discussion. I do want to open it up, because we have so much time, to you all to see if there is anything specifically that members of the advisory council would like to discuss.
you mean you want to open it up for public comments?
Yeah, and if we are ready to go, then I'll let everyone get back to the other things that we have going on. So yeah, let's open it up to public comment. If anyone from the public has something they'd like to share, please.
Sarah, I just want to jump in here really fast and remind everyone.
Yeah, go ahead.
These are not the an all-encompassing set of regulations. We are really working, as Mike referred to executing this to ensure that we're meeting the timelines necessary for the pro to get everyone registered. And so please understand that this is not an all-encompassing regulation. There will be more in the future. We just want to move forward with where we are right now and try to get those draft regulations out so that they can be available for public comment. And with that, Sarah, I'll leave it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And I see that someone raised their hand. Oh, I see that Bridget actually, before we go to public comment, can I hand it over to you, Bridget, in case you were responding to something from earlier?
Sure.
Oh, I think you may be muted.
Oh, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
I was waiting to public comment because Peter's our official advisory council person, but he had to step away, unfortunately. I wanted to comment again about just the complexity of compostability and how we're going to handle that. And it's definitely something where we're having a learning curve, but I wanted to provide some perspective that for CAA, part of assigning a material type to a product to a covered material type is for fee setting purposes. And so for that part of the process, the reporting, what category you're reporting into is actually how we're assigning fees to you. So whether you're going to be in recyclable or in compostable, it may impact, the fees that are assigned to you. And so in other states, we have, on that part of it, we have said, if you are certified compostable and you're marking yourself as a compostable package or product, then we are assigning you into that reporting category for the fee setting purposes. We also understand that on the other end, when we're talking about end of life, there's a lot more fluidity and flexibility. So you may have an intention of maximizing how many pizza boxes make it into recycling, but we know in reality, we'd rather have the dirty pizza box go into composting than into the trash, right? For example, so there's gonna be more fluidity in sort of what happens practically at the end of life. But I just wanted to provide that context around fee setting and how having a clean delineation of what we are putting into the recyclable category or what reporting category we have is really important for the process of fee setting. Just wanted to add that perspective.
Thank you, Bridget.
And it looks like Pete's back. And Pete, there was a little bit of a discussion around pressurized cylinders that I think people were interested in your feedback. But thanks so much. I'm gonna go on mute again.
Perfect. Sorry, what was the feedback that was?
Yeah. So we brought up the letter from PCIA, and I think people were discussing what's happening in Canada, and if someone had a specific question that they'd like to come back to, please feel free to jump back in.
So typically in Canada, certain types of hazardous or special products are usually dealt with separately in separate legislation for those materials. So pressurized cylinders, used oil containers, which David's got his hand up right now, would be dealt with under those programs because they're not materials you would ever want really in a curbside program. And so they're dealt with specifically through those programs because they really have a different collection and processing systems that are used to manage those materials. Now that's not the case in the U.S. The U.S. we've seen different states taking different approaches with pressurized cylinders. Some are including them. Colorado's including them. So it's a bit of a mix right now. David, did you? Oh, yeah. Maybe I shouldn't be.
No, it's all good. Yeah, David, please jump in.
Excellent. Thanks very much. David Laws. I'm the CEO of LPMA powered by Interchange 360. We're the EPR compliance organization for the petroleum sector. As Peter mentioned, we are delivering programs across the US for motor oil containers and other petroleum related containers that don't fit too well in the curbside program. And so I just wanted to get on record here that we are intending to provide a program for Maryland when that opportunity presents itself. And I think that's where my statement or question is around, is when exactly does that opportunity present itself? I noticed there's some discussion of individual program plans, which is great. It is kind of what we've accessed in Colorado for, I would say, the first individual program plan ever approved in the US. And we're getting ready to deliver that program in next year. So I guess two pieces I would like to share with you. It's really important that that definition of individual program plan allows for groups of producers to be able to align themselves. So it gives that flexibility for groups of producers. So multiple petroleum companies can get together, form LPMA, submit a plan to the state where we can efficiently collect that stuff separate from the curbside program. In Colorado, we're using the depot program, or we'll use roundups or retailers. So that is really important that be allowed, that you can have groups of individual producers submit a plan together. Effectively what we did in Colorado, it's individual, but we took a bunch of individual plans and stapled them together, and it's a group of individual plans. There's that. The second piece I'd like to leave is it's important to align the dates. So there's a date by which producers must join the PRO. That should be PRO or register your individual program plan. Why that's important is it gets really confusing if the date passes and there's no, like if it's just join the PRO date, individual producers intend to submit a plan, but they will be wondering if they're in non-compliance if they haven't registered with the state by the same date. So it's important to align those must join the PRO dates with must join the PRO or provide notice or registration or something for an individual program plan.
Yeah, thank you, David, for those comments. And this is likely something you're already familiar with, but I'm just going to put it back out there that the July 1st, let me make sure I have this right. Yes, the July 1st deadline for registration is also the date which a group of producers may begin to operate, may develop and operate an alternative collection program as well. But thank you for those comments.
And David, Andy Hackman from American has already put that on the chat. I mean, there are things that can shift when it comes to execution. So if you're looking for the date, I think refer to the legislation. It already has some of those. Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Go ahead, Rick.
Just a couple of quick questions. When the regulations are being written, is there anything in there for Maryland producers that ship their product out of state?
Could you please elaborate on what the question, like, as in?
So for example, and as I said earlier, I just got an email about this yesterday from a website called BED. We are a metal producer in Maryland. We produce in Maryland as well as Ohio, but a fair number of our products are shipped out of state, so would never be recycled or in the waste in Maryland. As it goes through, will there be any discussion around that, or will you just have to kind of pay on everything that you produce, even though it will not be in Maryland at the end of its life?
I think this is a Peter response because Peter, he gets.
Yeah, they wouldn't be considered obligated materials. So the program only states with materials that are sold in the state. Or distributed in the state, because you're distributing them outside of the state, they wouldn't be captured in the program.
Okay, and one last question, or sorry, two more. Is there an exemption list of products, like a product that's infinitively recyclable, such as tin plated steel?
So there's currently not a specific, like a list of specific products, but there are exemptions and exclusions that are identified throughout the law. For example, packaging, maybe that's a poor example. Paper includes XYZ, but does not include another set of categories of items. And then there is a definition for exempt material as well in the law. And so that might be worth looking at as well.
And where would I find information on that?
Yeah, sure. So the law can be found currently on MGA's, on the Maryland General Assembly's webpage. It's also been published, I guess, in two places it can be found on the web page, but it's published in statute, and I think it's section 9. So it starts in the 1700s, and I can put something very specific in the chat, and then it goes into the 92501. That's kind of where it picks back up. But let me get that specifically to you in the chat.
Great, thank you very much.
No problem. Go ahead, Bridget.
I was going to add there that CAA, for every state, we do develop a set of producer guidance. Obviously, it's each producer to identify whether or not they are covered or exempt, but there is support that CAA does provide. And we can also put in the chat here a contact for you, an email where you can ask some questions. And our producer services team can also help to support you on whether you fall into an exempt category.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other public comment, I think we will wrap up this meeting. And was it Rick? I will still put that in the chat. So if you want to hang out for a second, and if anyone else wants to hang out, while I do that so that you have that information. And I see that Shannon also added the link to the Maryland General Assembly website. Yes, go ahead, Angie.
I just wanted to sum it up and just say thank you, everybody, again, for your time. I really appreciate it. You know, I know that the timeline isn't favorable. I know we all have concerns on it. You know, you're not alone. We have concerns as well. However, you know, again, we appreciate everything that you guys are doing, all the time that you're taking. We know this isn't your first job. This is a second job for you guys, and it is taking a lot of time out of your priorities. I know we kind of discussed offline, the co-chairs and MDE, doing our best to kind of tell the group ahead of time if there's something that we need immediately from you, like another survey or something like that, that we'll try to be better about making sure that you're aware it's urgent. You know, that way you have enough time for it. You're not caught off guard, and we can all be as prepared as possible, because that's what we want here. We want everybody to be prepared, everybody to come correct and have really good thoughts. And I think that if we do it this way, and, you know, I think we're all aligned in that fact that, you know, we'll do our best. I can't always, you know, sometimes I know MDE and we find out things a minute before you guys do, before the entire council. So, but we do know that it's tough, because it's tough on us too. We're not the only ones. And again, we're doing our best. So we appreciate everything. I want to say that, because I know it's overwhelming. It's a lot. But you guys are doing great. And I think we're doing really wonderful things for Maryland in the legislative process. So thank you, thank you, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Angie.
Well said, Angie. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.